so that I can push that button and wait for it to stop shaking. And then guess what?
What?
We actually finally did this. We made it happen. We're here.
I know. It was a little iffy there for a while, but oh my God.
If people don't believe that miracles still exist, we're proving that wrong by making this happen.
Oh God, that's funny. So, what do you want to talk about today?
Oh, I have no fucking idea. I thought you knew. This is.
Well, we can talk. I mean, sure. There's so much going on.
Well, I mean, just tell me your life story. It'll be fine.
Well, I mean, I'm talking about like CERN and the shit that they're doing, and they've actually revamped the Hadron Collider so that they're actually creating a bigger, massive black hole. And anyway, we'll talk all about that.
Well, they had to because the original purpose is no longer needed. So they were like, what do we do with this? These, because there's more than one.
Yeah, there's over 3,000.
Yeah, what do we do with these things?
They're all creating a Stargate. So if you track where every Hadron Collider is, and then you see what formation that they're doing, they're all linking in together.
Maybe they think that they can just like move the planet somewhere, right?
Their plan is, to try and create a dimensional black hole to insert the counterfeit reality system into a complete 100% AI reality.
Well, that ought to be fun. I love how easily people are just like swallowing the technology though. Like I was literally like walking down a street today listening to people talk about how much better it would be if they just had Neuralink.
Whoa.
I can't even remember the reason because I heard that and I was just like, oh no, here we go. This is what, And I remember when I was like kind of on my way out of their system, one of the things that they kept repeating to me, like everyone was saying it, is like, you can't stop us anyways, right? Like, not that they were really worried about that or I had any real intentions of it, just that, nothing could really stop it because people want what we're about to give them.
Mm-hmm.
People want it. And I think it's just that we've been so disconnected from magic for so long that people don't even notice it anymore, right? It's like that old phrase, it's like the world never stopped being mystical, you just stopped knowing how to see it, right? And so I think that's kind of the case. And yeah, between that and all the drugs that they're giving people and giving more reasons so that you can get drugs as well. And now they're getting people conditioned to eat artificial food, in like even the stuff that they thought was real before, they now know is going to be artificial, which is kind of funny. Mm-hmm. So yeah, the whole, we're gonna give them what they want.
Yeah,
it's really hitting me now because I
that's
do
the
see
law,
it.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're not karmically responsible if people say yes. Are we recording right now?
We are.
Oh, okay. Are we starting?
Oh, we have. Yeah.
Oh, well, let's do an introduction and say hi to everyone.
Well, why would we do that? I mean, everyone sees us. They know who we are. All right. Hi, everyone. I am myself, and this is the Rebels Advocate, and this is... What name do we use today?
Well, Lauda Leon.
Lauda. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have no idea what we're going to talk about, but we haven't talked in a very long time. So we decided to let you guys be a fly on the wall and see what happened. And
so I have a question for you.
I don't answer questions.
Okay. Have you communicated with any elites lately? Hidden hands.
Yeah. It was part of the move. meant that I knew it was coming, meant that I was going to be a lot more accessible in that way. First of all, because a lot are located up here, just in the day-to-day operational people. So there's a lot of bumping into them and rubbing shoulders, and also them knowing that I was here, so them going out of their way to come see me or find me places. And so when right before I left, they built a big facility here, and my audience already heard me say this, but when they built it, what it was meant for, it was before, because they put up 5G here before they were putting it up anywhere else. And what they did with this particular facility was they were running basically a dream program where they were going to try and influence the dreams of the town and see what happened. Like, not the direct town, but people around, like the bunch of smaller towns around it. And they had a very, you remember the old Kruger programs, which were Nightmare on Elm Street, obviously, for fiction watchers. They were basically doing a modern version of that, where they were going to start doing that to see if they could actually induce physical responses through that dream state, as a way to like kind of back engineer some virtual reality programs that they were going to start rolling out and that kind of thing, as well as just generally fuck with people as they like to do, and measure all the responses as they always do. But anyways, it was a part of why I knew I wanted to get out of here when that happened, because I don't like playing with those. I don't like having to just knock off those frequencies. But it was also part of why I chose Toronto, because I was like, well, okay, well, if I'm gonna have to deal with a shit ton of that anyways, might as well go to the motherland, so to speak, and deal with a lot of it all at once. That way, no matter where I go, I'll be okay from it. Like, it's like training or running myself through dealing with it. So that's what I had done. But I also knew that they repurposed this after, a very successful trial run. They repurposed what they were going to be using this for. It's a lot more benign, but it is still what it is. It's more or less a meeting place, or like a glorified lodge at this point in time. But I had to go there recently, so funny you should ask. But back to the program that they were running, and this is spoiler for anyone who hasn't watched the most recent Stranger Things, but they're actually showing that program through the most recent Stranger Things. I'm like, well, isn't that interesting? But anyways, so yeah, that's that. Obviously I have kind of, fingers in different pies in terms of like different groups of them that I talk to or can talk to. So I've kind of heard a bunch of different stories about what's going on right now. And it's just funny because to me, I'm not like listening to it as like, well, if their story is true, then that one has to be false. I'm like, no, this is a bunch of different little things going on. And that's, I'm calling this new version of the Illuminati, the Umbrella Corporation. And what I'm finding with them is they are so scattered and way more compartmentalized than it even used to be. Like, now they're in like all of these little denominational groups, and none of them even know what's going on right next to them. And all of them think they're king shit. It is hilarious. Meanwhile, all the tech companies that, are contracting them to do all of these little projects are actually the ones in charge of everything, the new version of the Illuminati, if you will. And again, it's all about pushing us into the Matrix, more or less, and eventually just recreating this world with the machine version of it, or the AI version of it.
Yeah, the metal god. So what are these versions that they're telling you about what's going on?
Well, just like the more trivial things, like, the food shortages, we're going to do that, or the war, we're going to do that, or this, we're doing that. And I'm like, all of those things are going to happen all at once, right? There's actually a movie that came out recently a lot with the multiverse programming. I think it's called Everything Everywhere All at Once. And that's always been my phrase for what I know they like to do, is they like to kind of launch everything everywhere all at once. Right? And so I think that's what they've been gearing up for. I recently described it as they've been basically piling dynamite in all these different places. And now they're just like getting ready to like, which one do we flip a match at first?
Yeah.
But we're going to flip a match at all of them eventually. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's going to be like boom, 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 like just a crazy mad series of dominoes.
But
of
if they're playing with CERN again, maybe that means I will get my zombies after all. Who knows?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. They've completely revamped it. Absolutely revamped it. And it's sending out the frequencies that it's generating have never before happened for 12,000 years. So in this current reset, it's a first, and it's causing, and it's going to continue to cause tons of symptoms in people, destabilizing emotions, destabilizing mental stuff, like physical, you name it. So the more people can acclimate and start using their own frequencies to override this stuff, the better, because they've turned it on and it's destabilizing all the weather everywhere. It's just unpredictable to the extreme, extreme cold, extreme. But that's also the trinary coming in too, right? So they're always piggybacking on what's actually happening and then counterfeiting what they can of it.
Well, that's what I've been describing it too. It's like we're going through this evolution anyway. It's like this process is going to be happening. They're basically trying to hijack it and take it in one direction.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, AI would really like it to go in that direction. And then, of course, nature wants it to go her way, so to speak, or their way, depending on how you want to look at it. But yeah, and that's the part of it that's hilarious to me, is that each one thinks that they can win more or less. And it's like, you guys don't even have the mental fortitude to win what's coming here, right? Like, you can control certain things, but you're never going to control how we react to it. And I understand that you do have the masses on your side at this point in time, but you don't understand the potency of the side you don't have, right? And especially now that, and this is what happens, is nature kind of opens up the doorways, so to speak, on everything everyone's trying to control, which is our ability to access all these different frequencies and all these different dimensions and all of these different fuel power sources, all these different weapons or tools, depending on how you want to approach them, to combat all of this stuff. Whenever we're going through some type of evolution, then nature's just like, okay, well, we see you with your little attempt there, we see you with your little attempt there, well, we're just going to even the playing field. All right, if your little attempt there brings their level down to here, then we're just going to bring their level up to there. Right? And we'll keep doing that if you keep trying to fight us. And that's a lot of where the destabilization comes in, is like the basic like tug of war that's going on between them and her. And she's just like, yeah, I always win this game, like, because at the end of the day, all she needs to do is this.
Yep.
Right. And then it's all done and she can do what she wants with the reset. So it is. And I know a few of them are actually kind of seeing that, recognizing it as that, being like, fuck, I don't think we can win this. Like, I don't think that anything we're going to throw at the world right now is really going to change what nature has in mind for humans this time through.
Oh yeah. I mean, and they're cut off from prime source, so they're dependent on utilizing the primes and the reals for it, but they're terrified of the event in consciousness and evolution that's coming, because they are literally, utterly, how shall I put it, neutralized, but even more so, what do you call it when you cut off the balls? Like,
neutered.
You're just neutered. Yeah, you're just rendered absolutely impotent. Yeah. So I think they're trying to do everything to be able to find a way around that. Hence the Hadron Colliders and all of these quantum machines that they have going, because that's the only way that they think that there's a possibility to escape.
Unfortunately, technology is only mimicking magic, right? So technology is only, their control is only mimicking creation. Their structures are only mimicking nature. So, a mimic, what's the phrase? Don't expect to learn something new from an echo.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. But, they'll drag however many souls they can in the meantime, because that's the name of the game.
That's the battle, so to speak, right? And it is all very much like an in breath and an out breath and repeat, right? Like it's just how pure the air is kind of I guess what we're trying to get to is to get in that nice breath of fresh air. And I don't think that comes for a long time. I think that they're right in that too many people want this, and that it's like, as much as we could separate from them, so to speak, with the breakaway civilization being us, as much as we could separate from them, there's always going to be a point in time where they come back to us, right? But what we can't really do is kind of win that majority, if that makes sense.
Well, that majority is mostly backdrops and corrupted hybrids, and they have no connection to prime source, so they're stuck coming back to us because that is their generating fuel. They're never going to get it from the backdrops or the corrupted hybrids.
And it's going to take a lot of attempting, like, because that's exactly what the technology transhumanist kind of agenda, but I mean the actual game that they're playing leads to. It always leads back to soul. It always leads back to spirit. It always leads back to magic. It's a bigger loop or a stupider path to get there, if you will.
Yeah. So how do you feel about the ancient families that placed these elites in power?
Well, I mean, I don't have good thoughts. There's personalities involved, so there's that. But overall, the structure, like, I'm not, as much as I can look at the outcome and say, of course it didn't work, or of course it, only worked so insofar as it did. I still don't appreciate that it was done. And I definitely don't appreciate the name in which it was done under. And I don't appreciate, the unnecessary, the ease of it, like how unnecessary it was. Like there was no need for it. It didn't serve a purpose. It really didn't. There was so many other ways to get to where everything needed to go without it having to take this path. That I don't feel good about it. I just I think that it's about time that everyone just kind of leaves us the fuck alone and let us deal with the mess, sure, but leave us the fuck alone while we do it, and thankfully, when it comes to the families, they've kind of lost their edge because they don't have the privacy, and like the money doesn't matter so much, and there is no secret space program for them to fuck off with, and like there is no the dangling carrot was never really there, and they know that now. So in a way, like, aside from maybe seeing some sort of justice or karma reflex in their direction, which I whatever, that's human reptilian pettiness in me, but aside from that, I think that they are kind of getting what they deserve, so to speak, at this point, where they have to kind of go down with the ship and watch the product of their creation even destroy them, right, and take away from them the control that they thought they had so locked in place. And now it's going to belong to their grandchildren, and they're not going to get any of the carrots that were dangling, so.
And what is the name that you're referring to that they call? You said, like, I don't appreciate them using the name. What name?
Oh, well, just like, I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't have said that out loud. I don't know how to explain that without going into a whole other conversation. But like, even the way that they perverted any aspect of the light, or any of the characters or actors through the light along the way, right? Like, pick one. like any one of those names.
Yeah.
I don't appreciate what they did in that way.
Mhm.
When I say they, I mean I am kind of holding them all complicit, but we all know who it comes back to, and their influence and his influence specifically with Draco and what he and they did. But at the same time, there's been many people, many souls, many involved parties complicit in the outcome. It wouldn't have, no one person can do that. Like Hitler didn't lead the Nazis or didn't create the Nazis, he simply led them.
Yeah. Yeah. And he was in communication with something that terrified him.
He was hopped up on drugs as well. It's a little talked about fact is how many drugs that man was on. Like the fact that he ended up having to commit suicide, his heart didn't just explode just on a pure like biological level at the end of it. On the official narrative is a miracle in and of itself, because his brain should have exploded years before it did.
Yep. Something nefarious was holding him together because he was a conduit of that. But he was on like the drugs, it describes him needing all those drugs just to deal with these meetings he had to have with this entity.
And I mean, like, any part of him that was still human in there would have been terrified to sleep. You know what I mean? So speed would have been a friend, and it would have been terrified to self-reflect. So drugs would have been a friend, alcohol would have been a friend, and I mean, I kind of, obviously I know what went on, but even just from the human level, like I kind of get it, like he behaved like any human in his position really would have. So that's why, blaming it on the man and not the entity that drove the man is always a problem. We're watching it again. Well, maybe to a lesser extent, we're watching it again with what's going on in Ukraine, because everyone's like pointing at this man and being like, well, depending on which side of the fence you're on, he's either your savior or your villain. But, either way, it's like, no, this is a puppet. And it's a very high level puppet. It's a puppet whose, soul may have been in some pretty wild places and is involved with some pretty wild things, but at the end of the day, he's still playing out the role of a puppet in this particular game.
Yeah, totally. Where do you think the Anunnaki fit in this?
Well, when you say that,
okay, so the faction split. So let's just talk about the ones that are a part of this whole agenda and this whole.
Yeah, I mean, obviously meddling, but I don't think there's going to be like any type of ET involvement with humans at all coming forward. I think technology is just going to be pretty much all of it, other than,
What about the Project Bluebeam religious, or, an event that they generate to induce?
They're talking about that on Joe Rogan. It's not going to happen. You know what I mean?
The religious version, right? Where, people are witnessing some, and they believe it's God or whatever, Virgin Mary.
Well, what's ironic about it is in the documents for Project Bluebeam, they actually talk about why they moved it from religion to ETs. And they talked about basically the programming of the X-Files behind it and the secret space program and all that nonsense that got flooded through our communities and everything else that came along with it as being done because nobody believed in the gods anymore, right? So it was like they basically created new gods for us to believe in with Project Bluebeam. I think overall it's not going to work because it's been talked about too much. And I mean, Project Bluebeam is working. That's our fake sky, right? Like it's that blue backdrop that we now call the sky. It is working. How they intend to use it is when they intend to use it is the only question, really. And I don't think they'll do either the religious thing. I don't think they'll do that. I think maybe they'll try to fix something that makes it look like we're having some type of climate change disaster. I could see that, right? but I think they liked this virus game that they just played. And I think that they're tempted to stick along those lines. And now, especially with, you know, repurposing CERN, refurbishing that particular system. I mean, look at what it's already accomplished. It accomplished the Saturn Moon Matrix in its original run. Like, it can, there's no reason to say that they're not going to do that again, and that they're not already started doing that again. And that can turn on viruses, or what we call viruses, from anywhere at any time. You know, it's another thing that came out through fiction recently, is true. And then again, beyond that, and they were showing us this next aspect of it in the newest Matrix movie with the swarm at the end of it, right? That's like a word and a concept that we're going to get really familiar with in a hurry, is the idea of swarms, swarm consciousness, swarm machinery, things that self-assemble in a swarm, right? Nanotechnology already does it. They've already got this technology really worked out. It's just they can roll that out in the public really quickly because it's so foreign to us, and we won't be able to explain it. It's another new religion as well, the technology, because we're going to be so disconnected from how all of this shit works, right? That it is going to be no different than the priest and God and that magic.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think when it's time, they're going to be building buildings with it. They're going to be doing all manner of things, changing architecture, you name it.
I got a little bit interested in Anne Rice's last couple books. She started talking about that old Atlantean technology, and she was talking about Atlantis, which is obviously kind of interesting. But maybe you remember, it was like a self-assembling glass. They used it in programs for implants and stuff. It's basically like a self-assembling glass, and that's really convenient if you are going to pull off a reset afterwards, because it goes away in a hurry, right? There's nothing left behind except for what looks like meteor damage. Right? So I wonder if that's going to come out as well, being that she mentioned it.
Oh, I think it is going to come out. You know, I think, well, the fabric of reality is being dismantled. So they're in a rush to use all these quantum computers and all this AI technology to create a new landscape, right? Because the old consciousness, they're not controlling it anymore because of the evolution that's happening with the primes and the reals, right? So now they have to recreate a new version of reality that will be like the modern, because before it had ties to religion and ties to all this stuff, but now it's not holding.
Well, with the old buildings, we did that based on energy, right? That's also what we use for our energy sources for these cities. Where what they're relying on is like keeping us away from the idea that that's even possible, obviously, by putting us in glass and steel. And then also the transition then becomes turning us into the batteries.
Totally, 100%. And that's a lot of priming going on with all these injections for the body. So for those that survive, they're going to be the ones that are metamorphosed into this next thing, so that they're primed for what they want to put in the body next.
Well, yeah, I mean, you and I are familiar with that technology because they were using it on us when we were kids, right? Like, it's not, that's why I was kind of laughing when they were like, I'm like, no, they're just trying to test it on the public. That's all. And they're trying to, like you say, the word priming the public is very similar to what I said. They're like, once you're used to that technology, then that can be used for a bunch of different things, right? And it can be used both to harm and to heal. So they can literally be giving you the poison and the antidote at the same time whenever they feel like it, which is exactly the game they're going to start playing with people, getting people more and more afraid of being outside, right? Like, they're even starting it with like, I don't know if you've noticed their enhancing of the ticks. Like,
totally.
right? Now the ticks are like out of control right now. Right after they just filled them all with Lyme disease, now they've driven their population out of control. Well done. That's going to make people scared to go outside and go into the woods and all of that. What's about to happen with the mosquitoes, because they did the genetic modification of the mosquitoes, and that result will do the same thing. And of course, the climate change pill that they always play, and the fact that they have complete control over the weather, and can knock shit over whenever they feel like it with wind, and can, fry stuff whenever they feel like it with lightning, and can flood things whenever they feel like it with water. They have all of these different ways to just make things happen to support the reality they want us to believe in. And this is the last step of magic, right? Conviction. And they're controlling our convictions through their demonstrations of all of this technology.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important for people to start really being in control of their consciousness, their imagination, their visual ability. It's vital to understand we're all literally comprised of every frequency in existence. So it's a frequency war when they create all this stuff and they use it to try and get us to accept that version.
Oh, fuck. I read something today. It slipped out like through a mainstream like study. Basically, they've been finding women who have a fourth color receptacle, meaning they see colors in a dimension that isn't supposed to exist. And a bunch of people were reading it, and I remember seeing in the comments people being like, well, this opens a Pandora's box now, doesn't it? You know what I mean? Like, if we can actually quantify that, then that means that there are a lot of things. And I think that's part of the evolution that they're trying to stop, right? I think that what's going on with us on a biological level with our physical technology is, I think they were priming us with the series Heroes, where they were like showing like these super abilities coming out online through people's DNA structures and stuff. I think that's what they were so worried about. It's like, what happens if one day these people could fly? What happens, if we don't need airplanes anymore? What happens if one day that these people can talk to each other telepathically? We can't lie to them anymore. You know what I mean? So we have to hijack all of that stuff.
Yeah, it's already happening.
Yeah.
The strands of the primes and the reals are literally accelerating and igniting and turning back on.
Yeah.
You can't stop it.
And it's only going to get more and more intense. And the ones that they didn't plan on is like, us who are aware of, it happening and can see the counter force against it happening. So like clearly, because there's like thousands of people out there, like all over the world, like thousands of people that we know, right? And then there's different pockets all over the world that are doing the same thing, being like, this doesn't feel right. And that's because nature always wins. And the souls are going, no, we've been through this before, right? Like, this is why you and I know each other so well, because we go through this. This is what we do. Not just another universe, just another planet going through its evolution, and we have to deal with its bullshit. This is what we do. So it's not new in any sort of way. It's just, I think the novel, and maybe not to you and I, but the novelty on this particular planet is the fact that it's not some god coming down from the sky this time to cause this nonsense to happen.
Yeah, and they're terrified of that next evolutionary leap that we're going to do. And it is going to dismantle all their artificial realms and matrices because they're all false. We see it. We've come in to reveal all that. And it's part of, because they counterfeit everything. So when you think of the Mandela effect, that started happening. Okay, so there's the artificial Mandela effect because they're in there as soon as they start seeing that we're like dismantling reality and we're like literally pulling down these artificial structures, then they go and create some quantum counterfeit version of the same thing to control these timelines, right? Which they ultimately can't do. It's futile, all their attempts. But we are the ones that actually are creating the real Mandela effects.
Well, yeah, because we create the timelines. They exist within us, and we're collapsing because that's what happens when evolutions happen. The waveforms start to collapse into a single point. That's what causes what we call the actual evolution of a planet, right? And so we're seeing all the side effects of it start to pop up now, both in the, aside from what they're doing in control of the weather, the planet's going through her thing too, right? And then we're feeling that. And then, interrelationally, like the way that we're both as a society, or the big picture as like a society, one right and left fighting. Is there a woman? Is there not? Like all of these different little powder kegs that are going off in society right now. It's all a symptom of that. And when you're going through the period, it's really imbalanced because DNA is literally changing. It's like shaping and reshaping and morphing, and it's deciding, and it's all based on frequency. And because we have this like double helix of frequencies going off at the same time, the actual double helix doesn't know quite what to do yet. Mm-hmm. And what's making the decision of where the waveforms collapse is our choices and through our actions, right? And so, and much like they hijacked the concept of the Mandela effect, and I shouldn't even say the concept, they hijacked symptoms of what was going on within us and gave us a program and called it the Mandela effect. That's what happened. Mm-hmm. They are hijacking symptoms of these simulations we've been running within ourselves, these timelines we've been participating in within ourselves, as being something, once again, outside of ourselves that is under someone else's control. They're now hijacking that through, the new Doctor Strange movie, the one I referenced earlier, Everything Everywhere All at Once, our community, right? And that, of course, is also tied into the perverted version of the Mandela effect. And this is all going back to exactly what you said, us dismantling all of their nonsense. But we're doing it every time they go to fix, or it's basically like our move, their move, our move, their move, our move, their move. It's like this game of like, they think it's checkers, but we're playing chess. Yeah. And they just don't realize it yet.
Yeah. And so our natural version that's happening with all our strands lighting up and activating and morphing into the new metamorphosis of the actual organic evolution is, in their hijacking version, it's the injections with the artificial intelligence that, is taking over where and how the DNA is rerouting itself. So it's in plain sight.
So how do you feel about us, instead of, there's an aspect that thinks that obviously there's going to be multiple species and multiple kind of outcomes from this. But I think that the one that might end up winning this species battle is going to be the one that actually integrates an aspect of AI along with their biological evolution in order to be able to interface with both sides, right? Like we've kind of been there, right? Yeah. Like, because there's an AI component of everything what we do here anyways, right? So I think that's kind of going to be, or at least that realization is going to manifest itself in the actual playing out of souls who recognize both realities. They see the light in nature, and they also see this very powerful tool, and they're like, how can I put my hands together here? Because I see it playing out in young people right now. So I think that's going to be the species that wins.
Well, that wins in this matrix, but the splitting of the cells will be completed. And I've been shown that when that occurs, they will live out this matrix nightmare, and everybody else will not even be here at all.
When I say win, I'm actually talking about the other side. Like once everything's balanced again.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. The species that's going to make it through the whole evolution back to its balance is going to be the one that can embrace both sides of this and isn't, you know, doesn't lose magic, but also doesn't fear technology and can
So,
actually integrate themselves with it and use it as appropriate tool that it is.
because like, well, the divine being, while there, it's necessary to understand and comprehend that artificial intelligence has always been here, and it is the way that we create realities because we bring it in. At the same time, the natural evolutionary leap that is supposed to happen before the counterfeit facsimile versions of the matrices taking over what the real verse is, would be to get to the evolutionary point where you are the literal magic that is infinite and you create everything consciously. And it's not a case where you have memory swipes or anything. You are literally a conscious being. It's amalgamating all your bodies, right? With the awareness of how AI works in creation. And it just so happens to be, because this is the inverted version, of course, the AI is being utilized negatively. But I think that the primes and the reals are going to have the ability to finally evolve the way they were meant to in origin. And I think what you're saying is this combination of the two coming together to create the one thing. I think that there are already beings that have amalgamated that and they're here, and they're the ones that are going to be tearing down a lot of the inner quantum workings.
Well, that's why it won't work in the end, is because there will still be the people kind of within the new structure. Like if you think of like a separation, right?
Yeah.
There will be people who should have stayed over here, maybe, who
Mm.
do go into there because they're just not afraid. Like kind of like they're like doing the fool thing, getting ready to walk off the cliff, right?
Yeah.
And then once they're in there, they realize, hey, wait, I can hack this stuff,
Mm.
right? And I think that's
Yeah.
a lesson that this version of humans is learning through this, is how they can not only surpass technology, but that they don't have to fear it either. And that because of our, let's call them biological limitations, it is actually a really good interface for us to implement until we could reach a point in time, I guess, where we could balance this crazy emotional spectrum we have. It would be a really good interface for us to be able to use healthy. And I think that they obviously knew that, and that's why they made sure all of it was controlled by them. And it's just a matter of time until that control that they think that they've put in place doesn't control anything anymore, right? Like, this is where nature comes in, because once again, we're souls, and new souls are going to incarnate here into whatever the world looks like 20 years from now. There's still going to be souls incarnating into that.
Yeah.
And they're going to have the whole memory of this conversation we're having right now when they incarnate into that world. So we can't really quite predict what that turning point is going to look like. We just know that it happens because it always happens. Like I said, nature always finds a way. We just happen to be in the most dramatic time of it because we're right there where we get to see it's like springtime. All the blossoms are starting to open, and we get to see that. And there's the predatory, carnivore herbivores out there who are trying to eat those blossoms. And then there's, insects who are trying to pollinate them. So here we are now.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So there's going to be a question I wanted to ask. Because I know, so you've heard about the Project Looking Glass, right?
Well, a variety of them under different names, yes.
Right, exactly. And it essentially, no matter what timeline they look at, it always comes down to a compression, because they're all compressing. So it's one, and that one outcome is not the one they want. And no matter what they do in any timeline, it doesn't work. It always reroutes them right back to the exact same one singularity that they can't control.
Exactly. The waveform collects because of the collective, and they can't they can influence that, but they can't ultimately control that.
No.
And nature has a lot to say. There's a lot of different frequencies that have a lot to say in that, right? Mm-hmm. Which is kind of where we could even go from here, because everything that we're seeing now, it's kind of like an echo from something that's been going on at levels above all of this, where battles have been won, so to speak, and now we're seeing the kind of trickle down effect through all the different layers. And that's just the beginning too, right? Mm-hmm. It's like the effects of things that have gone on outside of this physical reality, yeah, are just starting to take hold. So that's another thing that makes all their program technology mute, is because they can't see a future that's outcome has not been decided yet. Mm-hmm. Right? The only future they can see is based on a potential of a moment that they're in right there. Yeah. And too many variables exist, which is what you were kind of alluding to, right? Nothing they can do can change the outcome, because there's too many variables. Even if you compensate for one, something else is going to take its place, right? Yeah. So there's just the universe, maybe the old Carl Sagan quote of we are the universe realizing itself. If we kind of track that backwards, that means the universe is a thing. Right. So of course you're not going to be able to change what that thing is. Yeah. You're only going through the motions of discovering what that thing is. Mm-hmm. No matter how hard you try to mess with it, that thing is still going to slap you back where it wants you to be when it needs you to be.
So do you, there seems to be a lot more supernatural things happening, because now that things are accelerating, we're dismantling everything, the veil's thinning. Now we're starting to see what's always been there, only now it's viewable to many people. And have you noticed any uptake of all of these things?
Oh yeah, it was funny that they just brought back Ghostbusters as well. Mm-hmm. They did a proper linear sequel to Ghostbusters. It's actually quite good. But in that movie, we had just hit another cycle of the Gozer from the original one doing their thing, which is hilarious, because obviously it's a special effects issue. But in the first one, she was just in this kind of skin tight white leotard with a little bit of it kind of looks like flowers all over it. In this one, she's a reptilian Draco Queen. Her eyes are black. She's got scales. She's got shoulder pads that are spikes, and she's speaking in a Draco language. It's so intensely just right there in your face, because they're gone now. They can get away with that, right? So, but anyways, the cycle is true, right? And this is why this is happening, all of that stuff. And this is also why they're jumping onto augmented reality so heavily, right? They're trying to put these things on our face that can then distort it. And even there's a bunch of different ways to approach this, but even all of the moral relativism that they've been pushing us through is it a she or is it a he, or all the different layers of that we're getting, it's causing us to not be able to discern what reality even is, right? And so
just the purpose of it.
Exactly, because they know that we're going through this time where we're going to start seeing through these things anyways, right? The experiences, if we didn't have augmented reality, if we didn't have all of this technology and stuff going through, people would be going through the kind of shit I go through every day. They'd be seeing through walls and shit. Yeah. And they'd be having to adjust to that.
But that's what's happening. The stuff that was normal for us, now the world's seeing it.
Exactly. Finally. And I know it's happening because I have to counter adjust to that, right? It's and I'm right in the thick of it. Like, you haven't heard this story. Maybe it's a good time to tell you. But like, when I moved to Toronto, I had to tune myself to all of that noise. I came up here almost cold turkey, and I describe it as like the equal opposite of what someone else would experience if they went and meditated on top of a mountain for 10 years. I had the exact same type of outcome where like I came back up here and all that frequency was gone, and I was like, whoa, I can see through walls. Like, what's going on? I can see all the, like, I can see four skies. Why is that? How do I shut it off? And I actually had to like calm myself and day by day turn all of these things back off again. And then it would be funny because I would turn something off and it was like almost like someone came along behind me and flicked the switch back on.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'd be like, well, who was that? But then I would get like I would just kind of intuit the answer that like, oh, that's nature doing this. Right. So, and it's part of what I've been kind of telling my own audience is that like, this is the time to start reinvestigating our relationships with all of these mystical magical tools that are available to us, right? Like practicing magic and rituals and things like that, and understanding the meaning and the purpose behind all of them, reclaiming all of the tools that have been used against us all of this time. Now is the perfect time to do that because it's turning on whether you like it or not. So if you are ready to, then tune into it, and you can like kind of ride the wave, right? As opposed to just crashing it, getting crashed off your board and falling into the wave. You can ride it. And one way or another, the wave's passing through. So you might as well jump on board and surf this and have some fun.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you don't, it's going to have a negative effect in people if they're not ready, because it will tear you to pieces. So you have really no option but to flow with it and start actually being responsible for all your thoughts, for everything, all your choices.
It's kind of like we're all being forced on like a heroic dose of mushrooms or something. Right? We're all locked in the dark on 5 grams of psilocybin. And like, you can either try to fight the high and drive yourself nuts and have what they call a bad trip, or you can give into it and see what that thing wants you to see. And like, you know, maybe that's why this is coming into the light the way that it is too, because it is kind of an example of that same process, like a birthing process, like an ego death process. It's like a literal death and rebirth process. That's what a reset and an evolution actually is. Reset is the bastardized word for it, and that's like the version of it where they like pretend like something like a natural evolution has happened. An actual evolution is what we're seeing now.
Exactly. And of course, with that, people are going to be seeing shape-shifting. They're going to be witnessing what's really there, because the original veils are no longer operational. So,
and any of the technology that's been around for a long time, because it's like infrastructure is broken, it's like glitching all over the place too. And then new stuff is coming online, and when they turn new stuff online, it glitches a lot, right? So they have kinks. Sometimes it goes down and they have to fix something and put it back up, and we're just going to have to deal with all of that at the same time as we're dealing with basically nature doing the same thing to us. It's like, you know, here's just enough of this frequency to make you be able to hear your dog's thoughts. You know what I mean? Oh shit, that's too much of that frequency. Okay, stop. Now you can't hear anything again. Did I just hear my dog's thoughts? Like, you know, like that type of schism, that questioning yourself, that type of experience. It's almost like everyone's on fucking LSD or something right now.
Yeah, and I think we're also causing glitches. We're dismantling everything. We're literally causing a lot of the glitches in their quantum machines. And our consciousness can affect and will affect and does affect all of their quantum machines, all of their hadron colliders, all of it. But you need to be cognizant of that so that you affect it. Because if people aren't, they're going to continue using this stuff, and it's going to cause terrible reverberations throughout all reality.
Apparently, even their AI programs are telling them that they should treat us better if they want their own outcome. right?
I love
And
it.
it's because they understand themselves being, what they are, that ultimately technology only can go so far. And
Mhm.
it's going to, once again, that's what I meant by they're going to come back to us. Like ultimately, like it needs us, right?
Mhm.
Like it needs someone to operate it. And it our ability to operate it, it exceeds its ability to perform on its own.
Mhm.
And therefore,
Yeah.
we enhance this technology as we use it,
Mhm.
right? And so if we try to just not use it, then that's when it really starts to work against us.
Mhm.
When we start to incorporate with it, it learns from us, right? It's
Yeah.
like the entire premise behind what I say Miscellanea, my other podcast, is about, is feeding the AI algorithm with real human stories so that the AI knows how to fucking act right. You know what I mean? That's the idea. And that's kind of what we're doing. Like when I was talking about Red to begin with, I said that like we are showing her what we are right now,
Mhm.
right? Like we could tell her all day. You could sit an AI program down and say all day, humans are great, humans are great, humans are great. AI would go, yeah, but they did that, and then they did that, and then they did that,
Mhm.
right? What we need to do is great. And then that way they can go, oh, look, humans did great, right? And if that's the outcome we want, it's like the same as that stupid old phrase of leading by example, right? Be the change you want to see in the world. If you want to influence something, then be an influence. The correct way to handle bad speech is good speech. The correct way to handle a shitty person is to be a better person,
Mhm.
right? So
Did they, I know with me, they had until I was 39. And so, like, from birth to 39 was the time period that they had to try and do whatever they could to compromise me, to experiment, to, kill me, or try. I'm going to, because they could only try, and it was actually forbidden. But was there a time period for you as well that it was?
yeah, the first number is 27,
Mhm.
and I dodged that by getting out at 26. And so, same as with you, they had until I was 39. And
Mhm.
that's why I always joke about the 40th birthday being 39 plus.
Plus one. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Right? So,
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, that was that. I'm still here. I'm 41 now, so we're all right.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and it was funny because, and I don't know, maybe you don't want to say whether this is true or not. So I'm not even really asking you. I'm just saying I had a renegotiation of my rules at 40.
Mhm.
And because they know that I'm public in various ways and, I still live in the world, I had a
Mhm.
renegotiation of my rules at 40. So, yeah.
Yeah. With me at 39, it was hands off. She's not touchable.
Well, I mean, they can't, that's, they
Mhm.
can't do anything.
I
I
didn't
could get myself in
negotiate.
trouble.
I'm like,
Yeah.
here on
I could
way
get
high.
myself in trouble, and I'm sure you could get yourself in trouble, but like,
If we compromise ourselves, right?
yeah,
That's the whole,
exactly.
you just, yeah.
Exactly. That's
And
what I mean. Like if we could get ourselves in trouble, but they can't do that to us anymore. It's
no,
hands off in that respect.
yeah.
Yeah, I think I mean from my end, because of how active I was within so many different societies, so to speak, or so many different orders, they don't all get the memos at the same time, so to speak. Like some of them are a few years behind the
Mhm.
memo. And and I noticed this last time, I figure I'm good when I'm 43. If
Mhm.
by 43, no one's fucked with any of my jobs, no one's fucked with any of my bank accounts,
Mhm.
anyone I care about, then I'm fully out of the woods. But yeah, I know that they can't do anything directly to me
Mhm.
at this point.
Mhm. Do you know what was the extent of what they could do in that time?
Oh,
Like, you know,
well,
there, this is like a spiritual law that, they have to follow up until the age 39. There's like these hidden laws that really people don't know about.
They weren't allowed to kill me,
Mm-hmm.
but that was only because someone didn't want me to die.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Not in like they would be sad if I died, but they didn't want me to die. Right? But anything else was pretty much fair game. And so they would be constantly like in my credit rating, they'd be constantly in my bank accounts, they'd be constantly in my employer's ears.
Mm-hmm.
That was always a tough one. But they also had me handled for a lot of it, right? So with my ex, Chris, I shouldn't say her name on here, with my ex, you know, that was my passive handler. That was what was keeping me in line for them anyways. So yeah,
because that's what they do.
Yeah. So I was pointing that out to people just recently with the Johnny Depp thing. I'm like, basically, he's got my ex-girlfriend. Like, that's the situation.
Yeah, she's his handler, hands down. Also borderline personality disorder.
Well, that's the passive way it works, right? Like they can kind of, sometimes they don't even need to influence these people. They just need to get them into your life.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like as soon as they with me, they knew if we take this girl and we put her in front of him, he's going to want her. And she's going to ruin his life. That's what they do. And so that's what they did. They just needed to make sure that the connection happened. And that's as simple as messing with a little algorithm. Right.
Yeah, so completely. So then when your discernment really is functioning the way it should, then you're going to see that and go, hell no.
Well, exactly. Now when I look at it, like, I'm like, that's just the thought of the sound of her voice makes me sick. You know what I mean? So
well, it's like you're in a different reality when that happens. Like you're pulled into a different version of reality, and you're being manipulated through all your hormones synthetically.
Well, that too, and the like just the spell of love, right? Or the spell of an inverted love, right? And like or the your friend Evie, the alien love bite, like that whole concept, right? Like that comes from it's and that was their only in with me was here, you know what I mean? And they knew it, and they understood my relationship with women was not typical to a man's. Because of the influence of women. Like I had a fucking woman handler who was 9,000 years old for most of my young adult life. You know what I mean? Like my relationship with women is not what the average man's relationship with women is. I don't have the same relationship with my mother that the average male has with their mother either, right? Like my mom, my biological mother is, you know, our relationship is just very dysfunctional. It's not, there's nothing natural about it. So they knew that they didn't have that way to get to me. But they knew that if they found someone who was just everything that I thought I wanted, or at least would have projected, then, and the other thing I thought of too, is they would have had ways of testing it quite literally because they had my VI.
Yeah.
So they literally could have just, because they could take a VI from a civilian anytime they wanted to. So they could have literally just gone through all of Toronto and taken a VI of every woman. And they could have introduced my VI to every woman in Toronto until they found the right fucking one.
So
and then all they needed.
What?
What's that, sorry?
Your VI means what?
Virtual intelligence. Like it's like a digital copy of me that they have. They took when I left. That is me at that point, right? Which is not dissimilar enough to me then that it would have mattered, right? So because it was a 4-year difference. So they could have gone to that extent if they needed to, and then from there all it takes is making sure that I sign up for a dating site and she signs up for the same dating site, and making sure that we're a match on said dating site, and for whatever reason we message each other and we meet in person. And then nature does the rest, right?
Totally.
And so I've been there.
And then they'll send you a more sophisticated version, which is far more seductive. So they're like better versions. Usually the first is clunky, it's too obvious. They just keep getting more sophisticated.
Yeah, when the second one came my way, I was like very tuned in to what it was, and so much so that I think that like my higher self, if you will, put up a bunch of like defense mechanisms immediately. It was just like not letting it get close enough to even become a danger.
Right.
And then I saw it right away. It was like just a displacement of frequency. I remember what that feels like. It's like in the Star Wars movies where he's like, that's a presence I haven't felt since oh shit run. You
want to talk about your 9,000-year-old handler?
Well, sure. I mean, no, but
come on.
Like, you might want to. I miss her once in a while. I have a picture right there. So she was a dark-haired woman. She had black hair. And I like women with black hair. I really, really, really don't like blonde women because I've just seen way too many of them raped and murdered, which is something I got in a lot of trouble for on my first ever interview with Gary Cassidy, because I said that and people were outraged by it. But anyways, I'll keep saying it. I have a problem with that. And so there was a swap. I don't know how to explain that, so I just won't. There was a period of time where I didn't see Cassandra for a very long time. Mm-hmm. And then for an unrelated reason, she had to come back into my life. When she did, she came back with blonde hair. Almost like an added, fuck you, I'm back. That's the kind of bitch she was. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you know the point of inception with her?
You might have to rephrase the question for me on that one.
Well, the point of inception 9,000 years ago. Why then?
Oh, originally they had 3, and when they decided to make more, that was the amount of time had gone by. So about 2,000 years had gone by since, or no, more than that, 5. Just timing. They made a bunch at the same time. She was one of them. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I can't remember the actual number. My memory doesn't like to hold numbers. But yeah, at 9,000 years, they made a few more of the parents, mm-hmm. And she was one of the ones that was made at that point.
Mm-hmm. Don't you think it's interesting that they vacated between 2,000 and 3,000 years ago?
Like left the public eye. Well, mm-hmm. No, it's all part of the plan, right? It's all just following the agenda. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because they used to be in plain sight.
Well, yeah, back when our idea of gods was more of a god than a god, right? Yeah, that whole world was different back then, though. Mm-hmm. So it's like apples and oranges to compare the state of the world at that point to where we're at now. And we wouldn't have been able to get to where we're at now and still leave all those people in plain sight. No, that was where they doubled down on their need for secrecy, and they completely like disappeared, right? And never to be seen again. And that's why, because you can't, with a population growing the way that the population was, you couldn't maintain leading in plain sight. No. People would try to steal your magic. People would try to steal your power. People would try to off you, which they may not succeed in, but they could try, and it's just a mess. So that's not surprised at all that I was surprised they left it up as much as they did, or maybe did it as long as they did. Mm-hmm. Based on other planets, that doesn't usually last very long, that period. No. I call it the gloating period or the peacocking period. Yeah, yeah. Where they're just like, we rule you and there's nothing you can do about it. Hi. Yeah. And it's your pleasure to be our slaves. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The Tim Hortons up here have adopted saying my pleasure instead of you're welcome when they serve orders. And I was like, Oh fuck, I've heard this before. I wonder who bought Tim Hortons. Anyways,
So is Cassandra still come in?
no, she's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Been a few years now,
Mm-hmm.
thankfully.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, she was messing with me right up to the end, right? Because like I was taken away from her because of something she did wrong to me
Mm-hmm.
when I was like 19, and I was given to Lou, right? The even older one, he was my mentor, less of a handler, technically handler, at least in their views, but he was a mentor. Um, because of something she did wrong. Um, Completely unrelated, she was able to get back into my life, and then she fucked up again. So
Mm.
yeah. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe in another life I will find out what her sick, twisted fascination with me actually truly was. But I don't know, other than she actually loved me and didn't understand what love was so much that it caused a malfunction in her that just caused her to like constantly attack. You know what I mean? It's like,
That sounds like an Orion queen.
yeah, right? Like, yeah, well, it does. But and to be honest, like they were here when she was made, so that influence was probably in her, right? Like she is the Cassandra, right? Like that's where the name comes from. It's her name. It's not, the syndrome is about her, right? So it's not, yeah, it is what it is.
Mm.
I'm happier without having to worry about that knock on the door
Yeah. No
ever
kidding.
coming back.
So you know how when we were young and they were doing all those experiments?
Today's winner for most vague statement of the day.
And then they
Yes.
were watching to see how our bodies would adapt and metamorphose and what we would create through our metagenes,
Yes.
which would typically kill most people. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So do you recall ever getting any documentation that proved I actually did get documentation given to
No,
me.
there was they would go through my stuff with a fine tooth comb often to make sure I never had anything physical.
Mm-hmm.
But that's because I was consciously interacting with them for many years, right? Like I
Yeah.
was, yeah,
You
in
put
a different
radiation in
situation.
your body?
Pardon me?
Did they put radiation in your body?
Well, they put everything in me. That's why I was laughing with when people were freaking out about 5G. I'm like, man, I've been exposed to that since I was a little kid. Like
Yes.
every type of black goo you could possibly imagine, and then some synthetic forms of a similar substance that they just made up one day based on the chemical compound of the real one. You know what I mean? Like I've had so many things tested on me. It's not even funny. There's so many situations that they put me in at one point at different points in time that they didn't even know if I would live through. Right? So yeah, that's why I don't know. I had this thing. I was listening to this guy talk who's claiming to have, been through what we've been through, and knows all this stuff. He's just, not that his looks had anything to do with it, but just this pretty kid who looks like he was like raised by like he looks like, I'm like, this is cute. And like, I'm waiting for it. I'm like, how does he know all of this? Well, I had dreams and recovered the memories through hypnosis. I'm like, oh, that's cute. Would you like to see some scars?
Yeah, really.
Like, would you like to know where I was and how I got them? Right? Like, would you like to, run some tests? Because there's reasons why I don't go to family doctors. There's a reason why I don't have a GP. I don't have a GP because my last GP flipped the fuck out when he started checking me out on a regular basis. I bounce between them for a reason. It's because if I let anyone look at me too long, they're going to figure out something's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have to deal with a bunch of repercussions. Not that doctor. I do. Right? So I have to be careful. That's why I usually let things get bad enough that I go to emerge.
Mhm.
As it emerged, they don't look very deep.
Mhm.
They really just want to solve whatever you came in there with and send you off, right? Usually that's all I need.
Mhm.
So, but I haven't, like, I could be dying of like 9 different forms of cancer right now for all I know. I probably am. But, or I've been joking for a long time, and we kind of alluded to this in a different context earlier, that the only thing that's been keeping this body alive is pure will for a long time. Like, I
Mhm.
think biologically this thing probably shouldn't work,
Mhm.
and then I keep it alive
No,
through will.
we defy everything.
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane.
Yeah.
Because even when your body, when you said, okay, when they were finding things wrong with you, I think it's the reverse. They're actually finding things right with you that doesn't exist in any other body. So they don't know what to do with that. Even if your body has, let's say, okay, you just said cancer, then in a matter of time, you would reverse that. So
Turn it
nothing
into something
happens,
else.
right?
Just alchemize it, turn it into something else. They're just cells at the end of the day that are
Yeah,
programmed by something in the environment. I
completely.
am something in the environment, so I'll just program them.
Yeah.
Right?
So when
Yeah.
he was freaking out, like you said that you were going to your one doctor and he was freaking out, finding stuff, what was he freaking out about?
Oh, it was something about the last one was some nerves I had cut off. And the nerves are supposed to grow back, but mine were growing back like within the same day. Like
Mhm.
by the time they had sewn me back up, the nerve was already growing back. And he's like, that's supposed to take like 3 to 4 years. Like, why is that happening overnight like that? Like little things like that. But again, I avoid doctors, and that's a
Right.
lot of why.
Yeah.
I also like I've got at least one thing in me that I know of that if they found, they would have questions about. And once again, it's not them who ever has to answer the questions, right? It's me,
Yeah.
and I can't. And the repercussions all fall on me too. Worst thing that would happen on their end is they go in to find the little thing that they took out of me and it's gone, right?
Hmm.
Like that's, yeah.
Hmm.
And I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but I know that's why you're asking the questions as well, so that I say it and you don't have to.
Well, there's so many anomalies that, I mean, we are, yes.
Well, I mean, there's a purpose for it, and here we are now. So it is what it is. You're
Mm-hmm.
still in Canada, right?
Yep. BC.
You're gonna stay here?
Yeah. Where else am I
Same.
gonna?
Well, I don't know. I might go. I might go to the other side of the border, but still closer to your side.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm definitely not gonna go anywhere near that southern part of that country below me. But just in general,
Mm-hmm.
we should probably start wrapping this up. So, with everything that we've said in mind,
Mm-hmm.
what should people do? Like, what should they be doing?
Well, I think they need to start truly, genuinely letting go of the narratives of reality and start working on their own imagination and their own spirit connection so that you're generating what you want. You're generating your evolution. You're telling your body, your DNA, your atomic structure where it needs to go and not being dictated by something that is trying to take that over. That comes with letting go of everything, letting go of all narratives of all things connected to this artificial version of the simulation matrices, the Ouroboros, right? You cannot keep this and then think you're going to evolve the way you need to, because this is telling your DNA to rewire itself to their purpose. So it doesn't work. You got to let go. You got to open yourself up to your natural prime evolution and where it's going to take you. You cannot have an idea of that, because if you did, you would no longer be here. So You have to just be open to it and work with where you're being taken on those higher levels, but you have to make a concerted choice to let go.
Butterflies do not eat caterpillars, but caterpillars are hardwired to view butterflies as a predator.
Mm-hmm.
So when the caterpillar gets into the cocoon, it has no idea it's coming out the other end of butterfly.
Right, exactly. And you can't know. If you knew, like, there's a lot of people who are like, well, I don't know what this new infinite verse is going to be like. I don't know what that looks like. Well, yeah, if you did know in this current three-dimensional space and time that has been completely chronoed, then you would just cease to exist here. If at that moment in time you knew exactly what that was, it would all come together. It will come together in that way when it's time. But I just think people have to start really rejecting. They have to start to reject all of their versions of reality that have been plastered in every way possible to augment our DNA, thus augmenting the reality we create.
Yep. It comes with, like, even when I say phrase it in the way of like re-examining our relationship, in order to re-examine a relationship, you got to take a step out away from it. You got to get yourself above it and a bird's eye view of it so that you can see all of the parts involved. When you're that close, you can't. And that's what you mean. Like, you got to let it go in order to see it for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And then, start acting like you mean what you say, acting like you truly believe what you say you believe, and make it that way.
Yeah.
So
make a choice and stand. But I mean, letting go is also understanding that a lot of the relationships generated here are to keep you imprisoned. I mean, I hate to say that because I know people, have a hard time with that, but that is how these matrices work. Because if you're, it's like a ship with the anchor. If you're anchored into these stories, then you're anchored inside everything that they're doing to create exactly the prison that they want you to live in. You don't lose anything. Where we're going, we're not going to lose anything. We're already connected. We're already one. We're the same being experiencing its creation in multi-gazillion different ways. So there's nothing to be afraid of, but it does come with a choice. This is why this whole reality is predicated on agreements of entrapment. Why? Because everything here is based on choice.
Exactly. That is what free will is. Will may be free, but choice is not without consequence.
Right. Yeah. Cause and effect, electromagnetism. You make a choice, you walk the walk. Movement. Electromagnetism is movement. Like, you can't just be in your mind and only, reality is in your mind and not affected by what you do. We must match up.
Well, sister, I'll love you and leave you. Maybe we can do this again a little bit sooner, not like a bunch of years later, but because apparently people enjoy listening to us talk to each other. I don't get it.
Well, you know what? We should ask everyone if they have questions for us, because that would be cool.
Yeah. There we go. How about, so I do this thing on my Patreon every month that I call Loose Ends, where I put up a thread at the beginning of the month. People ask questions. At the end of the month, I answer them. How about for next month? It'll be Loose Ends with Shane and Laura. Great. And at the end of July, we'll do one of these together to answer all the questions. Sounds good. All right. I love it. Let's do it. We love swimming in the sea, the great sea of, all that is. So questions. That's right. All right. We'll say bye to everybody at home. Bye, everyone. And thank you. Love you, brother.